Four Knights of the Apocalypse chapter 242 is officially out, and this honestly not only turns the battle back into the favor of the Four Knights, but also basically sets down the misunderstanding between the two groups a lot quicker than I was initially anticipating, and also literally the way the Four Knights turn the tables again is kind of expected and also kind of funny. So let's jump into things, but before all that, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And if you want to see more of me outside the channel, go and check out my second channel, GW Comics, where I talk about comic books. A lot of stuff involving comics has been coming out lately, and I've been talking a lot over there recently, so go check that out whenever you get the chance. Link in the description down below. Now then, let's jump right into the chapter. So chapter 242 of Four Knights of the Apocalypse, titled The Predicament, and what a predicament it actually was. Now the cover image of the chapter is actually of An and Nazienz sitting in a field, staring into the sky in terms of An, and Nazienz just curling up, being, wholesome, adorable, etc. stuff, and in the sky just the cartoony, pudgy Percival in the sky. Obviously this is a more Percival-focused chapter. So we begin from where we left off last week, as it seems like Lancelot is the last of the Four Knights standing, with the future children taking out their parents. Percival turned into a tree, Gawain has seemingly been disintegrated, and Tristan has been seemingly pierced through by a spear. And they're telling Galahad to take down Lancelot. And Galahad says, well, you heard the guy, you Lancelot faker. But then Galahad notices something. Lancelot's demeanor isn't worried at all, as he says, hey, if you all want to jump at me all at once, fine, go right ahead. But maybe you gotta check if you actually beat your opponents first. As then all the Grail Knights are just like, wait, what is he talking about? As then Lohengrin and Cardiez look over at the, I'm gonna dub PERCIVAL, as like, wait, how can a man survive having every square inch of his body shot by arrows? Also, I just realized that looking at this closer, while he is technically looks like a tree, he is just impaled by a bunch of arrows branching out like trees. That's actually really damn cool. But yeah, Percival is basically rustling the arrows that have impaled every inch of his body, as he then creates the Percival aura bubble, as he pushes all of the arrows away from him, as he's just nonchalantly like, wow, that was a close one. You really did nearly make me a hedgehog there, huh? Lohengrin and Cardiez are still shocked by this, but also something to notice is what this could in fact be, as before we see what they're talking about, we cut back to Ysaye. I keep mispronouncing this name for some goddamn reason. Ysaye, I'm just gonna say for now, I guess. We cut back to him as Tristan is seemingly impaled, but not really. Tristan's like, hey, this sure is weird, as Tristan just flies away from Ysaye, and he's like, hey, that attack wasn't enough to break my sword. That's kind of weird. I knew I cleaned it and adjusted it before we left for this place. But Lancelot just flat out admits, oh yeah, sorry. I gave Escanor a good swipe with that sword and back in the tower. And so Tristan is like, wait, this is your fault the sword broke? And I'm like, oh man, I completely forgot that weapons tend to break with Lancelot. I figured that due to the fact that the sword was still intact, I never mentioned this. I thought the fact that the sword was still intact meant that it was, well, very much adjusted to withstand high magical power, perhaps. Maybe dubs alternate between arcs so it could withstand some strength for all we know. Or it could have just been the dragon handle taking the brunt of the blows. But no, Lancelot used just enough of it so that of his power just so it wouldn't break immediately. But it literally whittled it down to the point where that spear just instantly broke it in two, which I find hilarious that it took just a single hit for the sword to break because Lancelot whittled down its vitality to such a degree. I find that so funny and has a lot of RPG logic. But Ysaye then looks over at Tristan's gut as he realizes the stab didn't even pierce him or hurt him at all. And he's wondering what kind of trick this was. Now, we didn't see any goddess powers, so it's pretty damn obvious that Tristan just tanked the blow. It didn't pierce him at all. It wasn't strong enough to hurt him whatsoever. Now, whether it was just that it was not strong enough to pierce him, or if he literally used his demon mark to consolidate power in his guts so that it wouldn't pierce him at all, like he trained with his father to do, I have no idea. It could just be that he was just too weak to pierce him. But Ilroch tries to call out to everybody else, telling them to stay calm because they can handle everybody. but it's then that the Holy Grail that she's holding begins to disintegrate as she starts to panic. As then Gawain shows up right behind her, telling her to calm down, and that what she just saw just now was an illusion. She turns back towards Gawain as she gives a very confident smirk. It honestly makes sense. I was expecting Gawain to have just teleported away before getting disintegrated, but it implies that the entire thing from when she initially confronted Llywarch was just a very realistic illusion, which I have to admit that's actually really cool and a nice way to kind of add to her toolkit of abilities. But with that, all 4 knights are just back to where they were at the beginning of the fight at full strength and not on the back foot whatsoever. It seems like they just took the hits to see what their opponents were capable of, and they were capable of not much against them so far, which I find hilarious considering the fact that these are the future versions of their future children who are all adults. Meanwhile, the 4 knights are all just 18 years old, a lot younger than all of them, and yet they're still immensely more powerful and have a lot more seemingly experience in how they can use their abilities than them at this point, which I kind of like because it implies, even though that the next generation is seemingly relatively strong, the 4 knights in and of themselves are uniquely strong in their own right, even at this age. So that's really nice to know. We then come back to Percival, as it seems like Lohengrin and Cardiez notice that the magic bubble around him is just a giant life spirit. And Percival joyfully just pops it and just releases a whole bunch of the mini life spirits around him, saying, "You knew that? Well, maybe I don't look it, but I'm also a life spirit myself." As then, things start to click for the two of them when Percival confirms this, as Cardiez begins to go up to him and kind of want to check something really quick, asking him a question, while his sister is telling him not to let his guard down. As then, in an instance, that giant weird eel thing that almost ate Tristan a couple of chapters ago ate Cardiez in an instant, in lightning speed. Which, you know what? Respect for the fact that this was a Chekhov's gun for something that was going to happen literally 2 chapters later. I'm actually kind of surprised that came back. I thought that was just a funny thing just to give Lancelot an excuse to kick the wind out of Tristan for pissing him off. But no, it was just setting this up to happen later on in this confrontation. Now, Lohengrin ends up calling out for somebody to help save her brother, but Llywarch just says that she has her hands full right now, as do the other Holy Grail Knights, and so she's calling out to her brother. Percival notices this, grabs Lohengrin, and flies up into the air with her. As she's wondering why he grabbed her and is bringing her up, Percival just says, "Well, he matters to you, right? So let me help." And a desperate Lohengrin just says that Car is her one and only half-brother, and so they're flying up towards this eel thing to try and save him. But at the speed that thing is going, she's wondering how they'll catch up to it. But Percival says, "Oh, we don't need to catch up to this thing whatsoever." As we then close in on what is effectively the inside of this thing's mouth, as Car's just sitting in the middle of his mouth, just like, this can't be even possible. This definitely isn't the world I know, and maybe what I'm thinking is actually true right now. And I like how this is either Cardiez's actual ability or just an enchanted cloak or whatever, but he's always just translucent, see-through, aside from his head, which could just be a cloak or the way his hat is. It could be an enchantment or just his passive powers that he has. Honestly, it's a real nice effect, and I do kind of have to say it could just be a way for Nakba to just not draw an extra character in full detail, which honestly, if you're gonna find a way to get around drawing a whole other character all the time in every panel, make them translucent or invisible. Why not? But it's then Percival and Lohengrin just appear in the mouth. As Cardiez goes up, is wondering what exactly happened, how did they even get in here? And Percival explains, well, he just hovered above the eel thing very slowly as he just went up to try and eat them. And he just let the thing eat them so they can get inside its mouth. Now Cardiez is shocked that Percival was with Lohengrin for this section, but Lohengrin ends up mentioning he is a dead ringer for that freak that they know. No idea what that means, it could just imply their father. But they then just start staring at Percival as Percival's like, "Do I know you? Have we met in the past beforehand?" And this is where we're actually getting the actual conversation between these characters, because at this point, they just assumed everybody that the Four Knights were just fakes and just basically pretenders pretending to be what they could see as younger versions of their parents, and they don't recognize the younger versions of their parents, and we're gonna see why, because chances are they're gonna look insanely different. Now, Cartiez is just gonna be upfront and just ask the question flat out, and he says, Percival, this probably sounds ridiculous to you, but do you have a lover in your life? And Percival just sheepishly rubs his head, saying, well, not like that, but I do have 2 wives named Nazians and Galahad, as the 2 of them are just insanely shocked at this moment. Also, I do have to say, I've said this previously, they are literally just their mothers in this instance. Like, they take more after their mothers than their father. The 2 of them have their shocked look at each other. Lohengrin grabs Percival's head and brings him in between the 2 of them, puts Cartiez's head underneath his chin, and puts her braid underneath his nose to simulate a mustache, implying that Percival grows a long beard and mustache when he gets older. And the 2 of them end up realizing that this is their dad. And the 2 of them are in complete shock, while Percival is just kind of confused as to what's going on, because they're like, this guy looks completely like their dad, except he is way too young. And they would never believe it otherwise. But then Cartiez just lays it out flat for him, because he wants Percival to stay calm, that the both of them are his children, he thinks. And Percival is just dumbfounded and completely shocked over this information, as he just yells, what the hell, basically, as they're just flying away within that monster's mouth, as we cut away. Now, first off, I like the idea that the main reason why they don't recognize their parents is that it's like 25 years in the future, or maybe 20 odd years in the future, and it's been a long time since they have seen their parents. And at that point, they are like way older and look a lot different. Based off of this, Percival has a beard and mustache, resembling his grandfather. Also, I do kind of see why Cartiez has like a part of his hair colored a different color, because when you put it towards Percival together with the mustache, it perfectly resembles a beard when you put it underneath him, and that is actually really damn funny. But yeah, this confrontation was really damn quick, and due to the circumstances, Lohengrin and Cartiez realize that the person they're fighting isn't some faker of their father, but somehow their father, a lot younger. And Cartiez even realizes and comes to the fact that the world that they're in is very different from the one that they know. So at least these 2 at this point have really started to put things together and notice that they're not fighting some weird, like, monstrous creations that resemble their father, but it is in fact a younger version of their father somehow. So at least now, in this chapter, we are beginning to get the actual real realization that this is all just one massive misunderstanding and a very weird and confusing situation. And I genuinely want to see everybody's reaction to, like, seeing their future kids. Like, this is going to be some interesting drama to bring into the story, and what this is going to bring to it, again, has a lot of potential, but could also end up being way too convoluted. I've mentioned this in a previous video, but, like, it could be incredibly convoluted and just make no sense, and it's just there for just pointless dramas and twists. I wouldn't put him past him to do it, because he's done a few things like this in the past beforehand. But back to the chapter, we cut away from Percival and his kids to Tristan and his son, as ysaye just keeps trying to stab him with his javelin, with his spear, over and over and over again, not knowing how Tristan blocked the last blow, but tells him not to expect a painless death from a demon's full force. But instead, Tristan just casually grabs the spear and then yoinks it away, to ysaye's shock, and he just tosses it away as he just looks down at him completely unimpressed, with no wounds whatsoever, as we see multiple cuts across his chest where ysaye has stabbed him. No wounds, no bleeding, nothing, as he is just panicking, wondering how the hell there's no damage at all after he stabbed him like 10 times. But Tristan looks at him and says not to be careless with his words, as black aura begins to spark from his right hand. He says the power of a demon is a detested power, one that hurts many other clans in battle, but it is also the power of the man I respect, as he shed blood and tears in order to protect the one he loved, as dark demon aura erupts and surrounds his right fist. As ysaye is wondering what this odd, ominous presence is, as Tristan is beginning to go demon mode. And in a flash, Tristan says, if you lack similar resolve, then do not speak of this demon's power. As in an instant, he sucker punches Ysaye right in the face with a demon-infused fist. Ysaye reels back and tries to punch Tristan in the face, but it does nothing. As at the very end of the chapter, Tristan, in a cocky, cold look in demon mode, says, "Were you listening to me?" As then Ysaye begins to realize, wait, Dad? And that ends the chapter. So now, half of the 4 knights have basically met their kids, and their kids are realizing that they're actually fighting their parents. I love that for Tristan's kid, it took getting sucker punched by him, taking a blow to the head, and seeing Tristan in demon mode to put the pieces together. This could imply a couple of things. 1, Tristan might favor his demon powers more as he gets older because he needs that destructive power more in battle, and he has like full control over it, for all we know. Or maybe he is a lot more aggressive in training his kid, for all we know. That's a thing to think about, considering that it took a punch to the head and the demon mark on Tristan's forehead for him to realize this. That's kind of funny to really think about. But also, I like the speech Tristan gives about the demon power that he got from his father, and now Ysaye seemingly got from Tristan himself in the future, due to him being his kid, saying that it's detestable, powerful, and dangerous. Obviously talking about everything that's happened in the Holy War and everything the demons had done to all the other clans in the world, but also mentions that it's a power that he respects due to his father. He's obviously referring to Meliodas, because that speech, using that detestable power to protect the one that he loves, that is Meliodas 100%. So I think this is the first time in a while, at least in 4 Knights, where Tristan outwardly says how much he respects his father in a roundabout way. And at least it's also another way for him to show his growth in terms of like fully understanding his power in terms of the demons in the demon mark, and how far he can go with it. And says that someone who seemingly is taking lightly with and being overconfident with his power, not being cautious with it, will just end up getting blown to pieces by it, and won't really take it seriously, doesn't fully grasp the magnitude of the power that he has. And I feel like this is a lesson that Ysaye probably did not take from his father, and based on Tristan's words here, it does imply to a degree that Tristan might be dead in the future some way, somehow. Like, I said this a couple of videos ago about the potential dark future of the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse based off of the comments that the Grail Knights have said previously. That's very possible that most, if not all, the 4 Knights are dead in the future or have disappeared for all we know. Because I really feel like what Tristan is saying here should have been a core lesson he would have taught his son the second he started using his demon powers or awakened his demon blood from a young age. Tristan ended up getting this power when he was like 10 years old. It's when he unlocked it for the first time. And that's when he had to go through this multi-year long journey, training arc, whatever, to actually like understand the power and begin to start really mastering it to the point where it doesn't harm him and makes him go out of control. So it does feel like it is going into the fact that Tristan might have been dead and died before Ysaye like began to actually unlock that power and learn how to use it. And so without Tristan around and potentially his grandfather not around, he had no one to really like tell him the vast history behind that power, how dangerous it is, and the responsibility comes when using that ability and what it means. So it does feed into that theory a bit more. Now I'm curious to see what's going to make Llywarch realize that she's fighting her mother, and also how Galahad is going to realize he's fighting his dad. Because legitimately, Galahad and Lancelot look so similar because, you know, the bond genes are superior at this point, but I really want to see how and what causes Galahad to realize this, because if he had the same abilities as Lancelot in terms of like reading minds and hearts, he probably would have been able to figure out that these weren't fakes to begin with, to a degree, or at least have his suspicions. So it's very possible that power skipped his generation. But that's really all I have to think about in that instance. So we got half of the Holy Grail Knights realizing that they're fighting their parents, younger versions of them so far, and the other half are probably going to learn this within the next chapter or two. But after that, I'm curious to see what's going to happen, because this arc is seemingly wrapping up, or this section of the story is beginning to wrap up soon, and I'm very curious to see what's going to happen next. But you guys let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this chapter, what do you think is going to happen next, and what the futures of the 4 Knights are, and what will help the Grail Knights realize they're fighting their parents. And what's more, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps me. It shows you guys enjoy what I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And also, if you haven't already, go and check out my Patreon, link in the description down below. I got stuff planned there. I'm going to try and do a monthly manga review of a particular series every single month of multiple chapters at once, exclusively on Patreon, especially if it's a series that gets heavily copyright struck for a little sting. So, like, I have ideas for that. And I also plan to do weekly reaction content for a particular anime going forward for you guys to enjoy as well. And you'll get access to my patron-only Discord server that will also be access to first-tier patrons. But yeah, with all that said and done, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you all have an awesome day.